Welcome to the Dad Lit Pod, the literary podcast for people who know that a bad day fishing is better than the best day working. This evening, I'm joined by Dr. Alexander Marriott. Alex is the author of School of Homer and the upcoming release, the second in the Virgil Colvin series, Murder with a Glass of Malvasia. Alex is was the original Dad Lit Pod guest, the first, and he's
It feels like
back.
so long ago.
It feels like so long ago. He's back not because I ran out of guests. I want that made clear. I have plenty of guests, but because Alex, being my best friend, is highly subject to me demanding that if I have a free evening, that he can come on and join me for the pod.
It's nice. It's like I'm the Adam Carolla to your Jimmy Kimmel. I'm the Rich Little to your Johnny Carson. I'm the I don't know how many more of these we should try to come up with.
So, Alex, tell us about Murder with a Glass of Malvasia.
Well, Murder with a Glass of Malvasia is a classic number two in a series of detective novels. You know, you have the sort of aftermath of the first novel. Your detective is getting back into some sort of normalcy. And of course, a new case arises. And in Virgil's case, he's kind of a reluctant detective. He was a reluctant detective in the first novel because he had sought to get away from murder and homicide investigations and had one thrust upon him, literally by nature, seemingly itself. And then in the second book, he's found peace and happiness on this kind of secluded, very small Greek island, and he kind of fits in with this quaint. I shudder to use the term cozy because it's so laden in the mystery writing world, but sort of cozy local provincial universe. And of course, he has to leave it to essentially go on vacation with his new fiance. And of course, as soon as he leaves, murder and mayhem follow him across the Peloponnese to another very interesting location, the medieval Byzantine castle town of Monovasia, which I myself visited in 2021 on the advice of a friend that I made while I was learning or trying to learn modern Greek. And basically, he told me because he's like an importer of olive oil and olives and Greek herbs and things like that, and it's not his full time job, but it's one of the things he's doing, and all of the stuff that he imports is from this one region of Laconia on the eastern seaboard of the Peloponnese. And so he's very familiar with this spot. And he was sort of listening to my 3 week itinerary. And he's like, "Oh, you're going to be close to Monovasia." And I said, I've never heard of that place." And he said, "Ah, you have to go. You won't regret it." And he was right. I didn't regret it. It was really neat to go and tramp around it for a day. But of course, it also instantly struck me as an excellent place to set a murder. Um, Now, of course, why would anyone think that? I'd already written a School of Homer, so it was not unnatural for me to have the thought, "Oh, this would be a fun place to have Colvin trapped in a murder to have taken
Okay,
place."
okay. Give me. This is an interesting question. What makes a place exceptionally good for plotting a murder mystery?
I'm not obsessed with place actually. It seems like I am because the place plays such a big role in both of these first two novels. But that's only because I'm actually just kind of obsessed with uh, Greece as a place. So I really enjoy the of just spending time there in my imagination. So placing them there is kind of fun. because it allows me to do more digging around and reading and learning more about the places. I think in order for a place to be good for a murder, it has to play some kind of role in the plot. I'm not sure every every novel I've read that is a murder mystery place matters that much. Half of the Agatha Christie books I've read, not all of them. Some of them place matters a lot, but half of them, it doesn't necessarily matter. That they're here or there. Uh, I mean, obviously there are exceptions. You can't really have the Murder on the Orient Express if it's on some other train, or maybe you could. I
Yeah,
don't know.
this is the Murder of the Orient Express, but it's the Mark local from
Yeah, or it's
Baltimore
the
to
or
DC.
it's the Occidental Limited, and the so I mean, so yeah, but some of them, if the whole murder is taking place essentially in a drawing room, it doesn't matter where in the world.
Yes.
So if you want place to matter, then obviously it's going to have to be uh, vaguely interesting on its own, at the very least. A place somebody would want to go to, even if they're familiar with it, because you're taking them to parts of it they don't know.
Yeah.
Even if those parts are dangerous or places they wouldn't even really visit in real life, even if they knew how to get there from your book. Um, so any Mickey Spillane book, for instance, place doesn't matter a ton. The fact that they're all kind of set in New York, and he's in these real locations that are kind of seedy dives. Um, you know, it adds a grit element to it, but it doesn't necessarily matter. I don't know that it matters at all, really. I mean, it could be any city in the country where Mike Hammer is pounding drunks in bars and getting beaten up and tossed around. So the fact that he picked New York, I think, is kind of incidental. But I wanted these places in Greece that are known or unknown. Ithaca is very known in a certain sense, but in another sense, not really. Monemvasia is kind of exotic and totally unknown. It's not an island. It's not one of these romantic vacation spots, even though there's lots of tourists there. So I thought it would be neat to sort of show the reader a place in a country for which everyone kind of has a vague familiarity, but which is really different in terms of how it looks, how it feels, and kind of the notion of being trapped in one of these cloistered, kind of quasi dead towns where some maniac is killing people, and no one can really leave. I thought was kind of neat.
Yeah. You
Plus,
also,
it's an area with kind of unique food and drink options, which, as you are aware, as a reader of both these books, I like to play with a little bit. So if you're interested in thinking about eating or drinking alcoholic things, both of these books are kind of fun because I get to explore different aspects of Greek life in them.
yeah, I was about to get into that before you interrupted me,
Oh, sorry.
savage. Look, I'll just say this. Both Alex and I tend to set scenes in restaurants and around food. Though I don't know that the food has a direct correlation with the story. I think you and I just like eating and like drinking and enjoy sort of celebrating that element and recording it in literary prose.
I wasn't planning on this, but this is a great dadlit idea because I think you're correct. You and I
Yes.
do enjoy these kind of bacchanalian delights of life. And I don't think there's any question about that. I don't think anyone would be surprised to learn that about either of us. And I think many people, maybe Epicurean would be the better way. But anyway, the point is, yes, these are fun aspects of life, and it's fun to write about them. And I wouldn't say they're not necessary or not fundamental or not consequential to the plot. Because obviously, lots of things happen during these moments in life where information can be gleaned in a variety of ways.
Yeah.
Um, and but I wasn't planning on this. I'm currently reading Michael Harvey's second Michael Kelly novel. I think I got that right. I hope I didn't reverse it. Michael Kelly's a detective in Chicago, private eye, and of course these are a key part of his trip through Chicago, which is interesting to me because, as Dan knows, I'm writing my third novel, which is set in Chicago, as Virgil has to go back to his hometown to deal with a sudden and unexpected murder of someone he knows, and so I'm interested to see how people have been writing about Chicago in a murder mystery setting. And Harvey is someone who not only loves the city in very obvious ways, but loves its unique food culture. So it plays kind of a recurrent theming role throughout these books that he's written, at least as far as I understand them, through about one and a third of the five Michael Kelly novels that he wrote.
Yeah, and you and I went and did food research for your newest Virgil Colvin joint, Midway to Death.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. We did it in 2021. You get a sense of how slow my process is. We did
I
we did
blame it on your
location we did
publisher.
we did location shoots and photography, external photography and internal photography research. Um, it, you could tell at that point I wasn't a dad or even in a
I
serious
was.
relationship.
I was.
That I decided, hey, I'm going to Chicago. If you want to join me, feel free. And Dan was a good enough or bad enough person to join me for several days of literally running around the city trying to get photographs taken of consequential locations for Virgil Colvin's third mystery novel, which of course could only work if I had outlined it, which of course I had, but I still haven't written it in most of it anyway, due to my own idiosyncratic process, which I don't know that is all that interesting, but I'm not a person who just sits down and writes and then cleans it up later, or has the whole thing, in my head and puts it down. I really kind of want the book when I write it to have a lot of depth in it, even if I don't put it all in there. I mean, I want to know a lot about what I'm writing about as far as the place, the people, the feel of the place, the history of the place, especially. And as a historian, I can't really turn that part of me off. And I think it's important to the book. So at least the book I want to write. So yeah, it takes me a while before I really feel comfortable to just sit down and work out the actual draft, which doesn't take as long once I'm actually there,
I
fortunately.
think I think that's interesting because I find that when I'm writing, I'm very attached to place, and I like to give every place or every setting a strong hint of personality. I want the character themselves to react to it and to not to see it as an impediment, but rather to see it almost as foreign to their eyes. I prefer to have them show up in new places and then see those new places as kind of like a reactive, to have sort of a reactive quality to them, and have that figure into the narrative. So that's interesting. Tell me about your process. Describe to me how you outline a novel, because I do not outline novels, as you know.
It's funny because I haven't really done one since you and I sat down to go over the outlines I had for novels two and three. Um, and yeah, there's been no reason to outline another novel because I was writing number two, and that one's finished, thank God. Um,
Yes. And coming out from Pegasus
Vanguard Press, imprint
Vanguard
of
Press.
Pegasus, UK publisher in Cambridge, and they've been really good and working expeditiously. So I'm happy that it'll be coming out later this year. Hopefully, have a date soon. As soon as the publicity team is in charge of uh, that process for preparation. But it is out for early review, so to give anyone a sense of how close we are, basically a few months at most, I would think, before
Okay.
we're.
Would you, so this is the next question. Would you be looking to find possible volunteers from the Dadlit community to provide you with Goodreads and Amazon reviews?
Well, they're all going to have a legitimate shot to do that. Actually, if any listeners are interested, the final galley PDF will be available as a giveaway on Library Thing, which is a kind of like a Goodreads, but for really serious book nerds and library professionals.
Great.
And Dan chortled there. But one of the great things about Library Thing for writers, and here Dan may want to take some notes since he's aiming to one day be in this position,
Yes.
hopefully soon.
Well,
One of
I
the
was chortling because it's called library thing.
well, what else do you call it? Uh,
Yes.
So, so Library Thing has a giveaway program which um, will let you set up a giveaway of ebooks um, at any stage of the process, obviously, either pre or post publication. And you can offer 30 copies at a time, and you can do it 2 months in a row. And that will go live at the 2nd of June. So if you don't have an account on Library Thing, obviously very easy to set that up. Again, it's just like Goodreads. But the great thing about it for a writer's perspective is that the users on Library Thing are really, really committed to reading the book and providing honest review, which they'll do on both the Library Thing, but also Goodreads or Amazon or anywhere else. So that's really useful, I think. And you can get some really good, honest reader feedback really, really quickly. So I'm really looking forward to that. It's one of those things I learned on the first novel because I was really kind of working the Goodreads giveaway much heavier before I discovered Library Thing. And the bad thing about Goodreads on the giveaway program, at least for the physical copies, because I don't do Kindle Direct Publishing, so I can't do an ebook giveaway on Goodreads. On the physical copy ones, the rate of return as far as reviews go is very, very disappointing. I mean, really disappointing. The rate of return I got on Library Thing was well over 75%. So
Ow, wow. So just a just a
I can't speak more highly of it.
so just a note to aspiring authors looking for reviews to have a solid rate of return, library thing. Much better than
And
Goodreads
and
and free.
free. Even on Goodreads, even if you're going to just have a basic giveaway that isn't advertised as one of the premier giveaways, obviously you have to provide all the physical copies that you then mail off to the winners. But you also have to pay to list it. $120, I think. Of course, the good
So
thing is you get more attention on Goodreads, but I don't know what that necessarily translates to.
I mean, if you're looking for an honest review and you're not getting it on Goodreads and you're just lighting money on fire, it sounds like Library Thing is the place to go.
Now, I still do plan to do a giveaway on Goodreads later with some physical copies of the book, but be much more strategic about it. And I'm only going to do it once. And um, yeah, so uh, again, it's sort of taking the lessons from trying to market the first book and be a lot smarter and more, again, much more strategic on the second. And so far, I think I have been. I don't have too much more as far as the initial marketing sort of moves to do, which I'm happy about.
Yeah, that's great. So let's talk
Oh, but you
about
asked me a question about outlining.
yeah. Okay, let's get back to outlining. Give me Alexander Marriott's guide to outlining a mystery, but don't ruin the mystery, obviously. We want
Oh, I won't. I won't. I wasn't going to speak to any of the books that are out or being written. So,
yes.
uh, let's putatively theorize that there will be a fourth Virgil Colvin mystery. And
Yes.
obviously, whatever I'm about to say, I cannot use in an upcoming fourth Virgil Colvin mystery because I will have ruined already the plot for the however many people will listen to this. But first I'm going to think about where do I want Colvin to be, and we've talked a lot about place, so that's obviously a very literal interpretation of where I want him to be. But as you know, as a person who's dived deep into the alternate bizarro world of Virgil Colvin with me, that also is a reference to where I want him to be in his own emotional
Journey. Yes.
psychological journey. So what exactly do I want him to be dealing with? Which would be a really interesting question for me to have to figure out at the initial stage of the outline, because as you know, these three novels kind of follow a grand arc that is kind of resolved by the end of the third book. So if I was going to do a fourth one, I would have to come up with a new, larger, or a perhaps smaller journey within the larger Virgil Colvin story, to now kind of replace what had been the overarching arc or theme of the first three books. So that would be project number one. That kind of sounds weird because it's a mystery and a murder, but that really is important to sort of, why do we care about Colvin? Because I kind of want the reader to not only care about the resolution of the murder, but also to care about Colvin's world and his reason for being in these places and his own hang-ups about what he's doing and why he's doing it. Because, of course, that's going to be part of what they're reading about, and part of how he responds to things. And I don't want that to be in itself its own bizarre mystery to the reader. I want them to be, bought in and to care about that. So I have to answer that question. It's the big meta part of the outline. Where do I want Virgil to be? Where do I want him to end by the time we get to the end of the book? Once I figure that out, then I can start working on literal place a little bit more. Where do I want this murder set? Is it back on Ithaca again? Do we get another unlikely murder on this small island? If that's the case, sort of, how, why, who starts to become really relevant. If it's not Ithaca, then where is it and why? Why is he there? Why is a murder occurring while he's around? Is it pure happenstance? If it is, then why is he there to begin with? How does it fit into the big meta arc? In terms of where I wanted him to be and where I wanted him to end. Right? Those are all questions I got to answer because in order to start scaffolding and building the rest of the story, if I don't have a firm notion of these things, how am I going to convincingly build this world and universe for the reader? So these are the kinds of questions that I got to proactively ask myself before I start working out the the details of the mystery and the murder itself, and then be able to answer. But once I've got that, where's he going? Uh, where is he going to be for this murder? Then I can start thinking about, well, who's murder? And who does the murdering, right? Um, as I try to tell in all of these books, a murder for the purpose of a mystery novel, obviously, in real life, it's different, but it can be different, I should say. But for the purpose of the books, murders happen in a context, right? They don't just happen randomly. Uh, and there's always a story behind a murder, that involves the person who was killed. They're not simply random victims of random, crazy events. Uh, they're almost always murdered by someone with whom they have some prior relationship. There's always a rationale or justification on the part of the murderer as to why they did this and why it had to be done, and that justified not only the killing but the attempt to escape detection for the killing. Right, so I got to figure all that kind of stuff out at that point, and for that you want that to be interesting. You want it to be compelling. You want the person who was murdered to be kind of interesting for some reason, and you want the murderer obviously to also be an interesting person. Obviously, not too interesting. You don't want them to walk around with a murderer sign on, but you want them to be an interesting, kind of compelling, and somewhat unexpected person. Because when they show up later in the novel, you're going to have to spend a lot of time talking about that person at some level. And you want them to be interesting to the reader as one of many potential suspects. And so starting to figure out the contours of that then kind of really start to become primarily important. Once you can kind of get that kind of stuff figured out, then you can really start to sort of think about, okay, I've got the arc of the character, right, from beginning to end, where I want them to be, where I want them to end. I've got the place, where is this going to happen and why? I've got the person who's murdered, and I've got the person who's murdering them, and I understand the relationship between the two. Now I can start to get even more kind of interestingly creative. And here's where place and all of my research really starts to matter, because now I can really start to take a lot of the details that I've researched and read about the place, about the history of the place, about the people of the place, about its food, its culture, its ideas, its drink, its life, and start to sort of move those around creatively to fill in all the other juicy details of this universe in which this murder has taken place that are going to make it interesting to the reader, but also really, really tough for the character, right? For Colvin to sort of wade through this kind of densely packed place to figure out who did this and why. As a reader of mysteries, I'm always trying to kind of unpack how the author put these worlds together and what they want me to see, what they don't want me to see, when they want me to see it, and try to kind of anticipate. And I don't know if every mystery reader does this. I suspect some do and some don't. Try to anticipate, when am I being shown something really relevant and when am I being shown something that doesn't? Is this character I've been following along the whole time going to be the compelling murderer, or am I not going to be introduced to enough information until way too late to pick an actual suspect until much later in the book? And sometimes I'm really, really good at following the author and kind of, reverse outlining a bit as I'm reading through, and kind of, you think about it almost as a game of three-card Monte, kind of following who the suspect is throughout the book. And then, when the reveal comes, you had your eye on the right card. And then other times, and they're always kind of a delight sometimes, I should say. I shouldn't say all the time, because I don't find it all that convincing. But sometimes it's a real delight when the card gets revealed and it's you lost it, right? You were looking in the wrong direction. Um, and those are always fun, especially I'm not going to claim I've read more mystery novels than anybody else, but I've read a lot at this point, and it's sort of it's a game I like to play as I read them. Along with paying attention to everything else. Can I figure out who did it? And that as that's one of my joys as a reader. I hope that it's one of the things I do as a writer. I sort of hopefully make that game fun for the reader as well. At least from the limited feedback I've had from some outside readers so far, um, guessing the solution to Murder with a Glass of Malvasia was not necessarily super easy. Um, so I hope that's the case. For School of Homer, some people are like, I figured that one out relatively quickly. Others sort of thought it was someone else until much later. So maybe I was a 50-50 on
Speaking of mysteries, you've decided to join Big Mystery. You've put in your
that.
application.
They decided to make rules that allowed me to join. I think it's their fault.
So you have applied to become a member of Mystery Writers of America.
Well,
Describe
I
to
looked.
me what
Yeah.
the process for that is. Well, I'll let me do a little intro on this. The Mystery
All
Writers of
right.
America gives out the Edgar Award, which is named for Edgar Allan Poe, who um in reality is probably the creator of the modern mystery format and narrative. Would you say that's accurate?
I think he's generally credited with this as being the actual forerunner of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes character.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so the Edgar Award is the preeminent crime and mystery fiction award handed out yearly. And Alex and I, when we sat down to write mystery novels, had stars in our eyes and the
Oh
belief
yes.
that we would one day perhaps qualify for this prestigious award, which, by the way, is given out to some real greats and some real stinkers. I'm going to be honest with you.
But damned having the graciousness of a gentleman will not
Yes,
name
well,
names.
I'm not going to name names. This is just to say that the Mystery Writers of America is a very cool club. And Alex and I, being people who, uh, eh, dad litters, let's just say dad litters, we have great respect and admiration and desire to be part of fun literary clubs like the Mystery Writers of America. Primarily because there's just cool people there, and the idea of being a part of that and getting to engage in the sort of literary conversation that they're having is of interest. It's an aspiration and one that I don't think is snobby as much as it is um, a desire to be part of a fun conversation that people are having at a big table. And so Alex, because he has been published and sold a certain number of copies, now qualifies for the Mystery Writers of America membership. Alex, tell me, what is the membership requirement to join the Mystery Writers of America?
So there are many for active membership. It's actually a long list, and we'll see if I'm going to count my chickens before they hatch. So I could always be rejected, uh, but because it says you may qualify for active category membership if, and then there's a list of things.
Yeah.
So citizen or legal resident of the United States, I've got that.
Yes.
Your work is published or produced in the United States. obviously I've been producing it in the United States, so I've qualified there.
Yep.
You've been paid for your work by a print, ebook, print on demand, periodical, blah, 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 that is on the MWA list of approved publishers and currently meets all the criteria for inclusion. That's more questionable, but if the publisher is not on the list, they can always contact the national office, and maybe they'll decide to bump me down to affiliate membership at that point. Remains to be seen. And then they have a list of threshold earning categories for uh, what you've made as a published writer. One of which includes, or all of which include some threshold, and of course the ones that are listed here range from $1,000 to $2,000 based on how they decide to rank your status. And since I'm not self-published, I am choosing to go with the $1,000 threshold, which I've definitely made in royalties. So it seems like I've achieved that problem, that one. If they decide that they accept my publisher as legit, um, and really what they're interested in there, as best I can tell, is whether or not your contract is traditional or not, which in the case of my latest work certainly qualifies. Um, let's see. Then there's earning requirements, a one-time event, um, royalty statements, blah blah. Payment must be in monies, not in barter. Advertised copies. Payments must be actual.
Yes.
It's funny.
Did
It's funny
you,
all these provisos. I did provide statements, so hopefully those qualify. If not, they can always ask me for additional statements.
Alex, did you receive beaver pelts in exchange for your books? I know you do a lot of Texas book events where beaver pelts are accepted as currency.
That was my initial ask, but I was told I should accept cash. So
Yes.
um, the work submitted for qualification is not simply an article of journalism. Obviously, that's the case. If your work is a contribution to a periodical, obviously that's not what I've applied with. Your work is available to the public. Obviously, it is. Um, blah blah blah. Um, your publisher doesn't require you to pay for cover art, design, production, etc. They don't. Your application is approved by the Board of Mystery Writers of America. So obviously that will be something that I can't control. And In the case of writers applying for active status membership based on work published 5 years ago or longer, that doesn't apply to me. So we'll see. My reading of it says that I am at the stage where I can finally apply. They may decide that I have applied too soon or in error. It'll be one of these great mysteries that you and I will get to follow together.
Well, I'm excited. I hope to one day apply as well to the Mystery Writers of America because I am a mystery writer. That my um, novels follow the mystery formula, and I am a citizen of the United States of America, and that's where I do my work. So,
Well, as it turns out, even if you self-publish one of them, as long as you can document that it made $2,000, then you can apply too.
that's interesting. By the
I don't
way,
know how long it takes. I don't know
the
how long it takes
vast
to earn $2,000 on
the vast
self-publish though.
majority of self-published works do not make $2,000. I'd be interested to see if that was before or after costs of publication.
I don't think it counts any of that because you're self-publishing. You just
Oh,
have to be able to
okay.
show with your Amazon statements or whoever is managing your sales that you've actually accrued $2,000 of payments to yourself.
Yeah. So
So
what
I
do
guess if you were
you
obsessed with that, if you were obsessed with Mystery Writers of America, you could self-publish a horrible mystery that nobody liked, buy some number of copies of it yourself, and then show the statement to the MWA and get in. Not
Yes.
that anyone would do that. It's absurd.
Unless their last name was Kennedy. Their last name is Kennedy. They're definitely doing that.
Well,
There's
yeah,
probably
then
like,
your dad would step in, buy 50,000
I
copies,
mean,
park all those copies at a warehouse somewhere, and
yes,
then crow about how your son was a bestseller.
that is a bestseller. Portraits and Courage. It's a bestseller.
Ugh. Look, Ted Sorensen was a fine writer.
Yes. The actual person that wrote that book. That's funny. Look, Kennedy was too busy
He had other things on his mind. Let's just put it
getting
that way.
STDs at that point. Anyway.
I was gonna say, I didn't know you wanted to have that kind of conversation on this podcast,
Well, you see, at some point, and we could talk about, let's talk about that as the last thing we talk about before you plug, is that Alex and I are both historians. Believe it or not, uh, the dad lit that sells quite well is history and nonfiction. And Alex and I are both authors of nonfiction as well as authors of fiction. And I am not against interviewing nonfiction authors and would love to have them on if they would be interested in the Dad Lit Pod. Um, it, to
Oh,
my
you
mind,
haven't reached out to the historians yet? The historians are
no, I
always
know
desperate to be on a podcast.
they're always chomping at the bit. They're always chomping at the bit. The other side of that is that the Dad Lit Pod is about building community in an area that's not achieving as much literary success or as much literary development as it could be or it should be or what we're doing is or what I'm doing here at the Dadlit Pod and what I think all of my interviewees are doing is trying to build a nexus, a place to talk about Dadlit. And I feel like the nonfiction history community has a zillion places to do that. Uh, uh,
True, they
un
do.
Unfortunately, some of them are ripoff artists who just read their books and then recite them in, long form essays and then call that, historical podcasts. But there are zillions of people interviewing historians and people coming out with historical novels, and there are just not a lot of people interviewing dad-led authors and male fiction authors and um and even female fiction authors that are focused on topics of dads and dad lit. So to my mind, the dad lit podcast is always open to nonfiction. Um, in the
By the way, that
meantime,
you made me laugh there with the focused on topics of dads because of course Virgil Colvin is a classic dink.
and yeah, but something tells me that Virgil Colvin is going to.
In fairness, by the way, I did write the character. I did create the character when I myself was a single man. So
Yes, I let. I'm not going to ruin it for the listeners slash readers. Rumor has it Virgil Colvin's going to contemplate fatherhood, or at least some elements of fatherhood in Midway to Death, is my understanding.
I'm
So
I'm
it's
I'm incredibly impressed by how much you remember of the interior plot and chapter plot of that book, given that the last time you even saw anything related to that kind of granularity was 4 years ago.
Yeah, this is a thing that I don't often talk about, but I have a very comprehensive memory. And so I tend to remember those sorts of things. So midway to death, I could probably recite back to Alex. if he ever forgot about it, which one day
I have not.
one day when I have a book out there and people ask me about my writing process, I will be happy to tell them that the entire book gets written in my head, and the challenge is communicating it from the head to the hands. And that fundamentally, that's why I don't outline, albeit all the scenes are recorded in my mind, and I play them over again, sort of like a skipping record until I get them onto the page.
Oh, that you're just like Jeff Steiger.
Oh, is that how Siger does it?
That's how he said he does it.
Yes. Yeah.
He described it as being a seat of the pantser. That he doesn't do any outlining, just kind of sits down and works it out as he goes.
Well, I don't know that I don't do well, I don't do any outlining, but the entire story is in my head, right? The imagery, what the characters say to each other, what they do, is all sort of played in a very cinematic fashion. Um, while I'm go, so if I am ever stuck, I just go for a walk and I work out the scene as I'm walking or moving around. I sort of play it like a movie, and then I go home and I record it, and then subsequently go back through and edit and play it out. So it's
I think ultimately, no matter what method you use, it's basically an idiosyncratic question to each individual writer of when are you comfortable to write?
yes, yeah.
Because I think that by the time I actually get to the writing, even with the outline in place, creative, new, unexpected, unplanned things will still very much occur. So, for instance,
Oh,
Dan's
difficult for them not
constantly
to.
playing out in his head before he even starts writing all the dialogue, the scenes themselves, etc. Now, I don't do any of that. I set up arc of story, arc of chapter, things that have to happen, places they have to happen in, people that need to be present. But when I actually get into the putting that into a real universe and having it evolve on the page, everything is very creative and free flowing.
Hmm.
Because it'll things will strike me. Part of the reason I do all the reading and research and preparation beforehand is that when I actually get into the writing process, I'll suddenly think, oh yeah, the thing I read. Talking about having a good memory for certain things. I'm sure our wives could step in and
Yeah,
contest
yeah. You
how
don't
good this
forget to
memory
do.
is.
You don't remember to do the dishes, you son of a bitch.
Exactly. The which is funny for Dan and I because we both are the ones that do the dishes. But anyway, the 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 but yeah, everything in that process becomes very kind of organic and very open to change and adaptation. For what seems to make sense for that scene, for those characters, for that place.
Yep. Yeah, I would
So
say that's a
I don't do the James Patterson album, which
yep.
ends up being 90 pages long, which is a remarkable idea for a James Patterson novel because once you've got a 90-page outline, do you need a novel? Isn't that the novel?
Yeah, I would say so. You're basically just filling it with Patterson, with that Patterson
Well, at that
special
point, you're not you.
sauce.
At that point, you're not filling it with Patterson. You're filling it with the co-author,
Yeah, the co-author's special sauce.
whoever that guy happens to be, Bill Clinton
Yes.
or whoever.
Yes. Well,
By the
it's
way,
been
by the way, you don't want to fill your Patterson novel with Bill Clinton specials.
no, you don't. Well,
I'm sorry,
Alex,
I had to go there. I'm sorry.
I mean, you got to. It was laid up for you. I was tempted to go in on what James Patterson's special sauce would be. But anyway, why don't you give me the plug for your two books, and then we'll close out.
All right. Well, School of Homer and the forthcoming Murder with a Glass of Malvasia follow a retired widower detective from Chicago, Virgil Colvin, into the warm embrace of Grecian sun, feta cheese, delightful spirituous liquors, and horrendous murder. Of course, set in some of the most beautiful places on Earth, in some of the most beautiful climates that one could possibly envisage for any particular purpose, including solving one of these horrendous murder cases. So if you're interested in some history, in some travel, in some good food and drink, and a good old fashioned mystery, then please go check out the School of Homer and hopefully get excited for a couple months from now. Fingers crossed, the release of Murder with a Glass of Malvasia.
Well, thank you, Alex, for joining us on this, your second appearance on the Dad Lit Pod.
An honor
Uh,
and a pleasure as always.
yes, yes. And best of luck with your Mystery Writers of America application. I'm going to
Maybe
be
on my third
jealous.
my third appearance, I can come back and report how it went.
I'm gonna be so jealous when you have your MWA card. It's going to be I can't wait. I can't wait to
And
find out.
it gets you a discount on all oil changes and every book purchase in all the remaining Borders bookstores in the country. So
Yeah, all three
it's a
of
pretty
them.
sweet card.
Yes. Except that it costs you a membership fee of $1,500 a second.
Even so.
So, thank you, Alex. This has been the Dadlet Pod.